All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Leonard. I'm the Deputy Director of Rhode Island State Council on the Arts, and I'm so glad to have you joining me today for an overview and application walkthrough for the General Operating Support for Organizations program. The applications are open. They opened on July 1st. They are due on September 1st, 2026 at 11:59.00, not 0.59, 11:59 p.m. No late applications can be accepted, so please do plan ahead. All right, during our time together today, I'm going to walk through an introduction to the General Operating Support Program. Some of you will be familiar with this information. For some of you all, it will be new. We'll talk about the eligibility criteria, funding rules and restrictions, how to get started with your application, what you'll need to have on hand, how the panel will be evaluating applications, and then we'll go into the state grant system, eCivis or UNA. Both names get used at times, and I'll show you a bit more of what's in the system and what some helpful tips. More help will be available, as I said, through drop-in office hours later this month and through the month of August. So RISCA's General Operating Support for Organizations program provides multi-year operating support to arts and culture organizations and culturally specific organizations. We'll talk about the definitions of those in just a moment. In Rhode Island, that meaningfully engage and inspire their communities through arts and culture programming. Organizations in our General Operating Support program make important contributions to the diversity and vitality of our communities, the economy of our state, the enrichment of all Rhode Islanders, and our quality of life. So our General Operating Support Program has four principal goals: providing multi-year operating support, as I said, through a competitive grant program, to include organizations that are evaluated by peer review panels as being responsive and accountable to the cultural needs of the communities they serve. If you focus on one goal, that's the one for you all. The rest of them are kind of for us and how we put the program together. But there will be questions in the application that you will see reflect that commitment and program goal is being engaged with and responsive to the communities that you serve. And the program has been structured to ensure distribution of funds across the state of Rhode Island and across organizations of a broad range of budget sizes. In order to accomplish these goals, particularly goals 3 and 4, we will be reserving 14 awards for the highest scoring eligible applicants in each of 3 budget categories. We have not put a specific number on that yet because our experience is that there are natural breaks in those budget sizes. So we'll be using our historic budget categories as a jumping off point, but we may shift that slightly. As that becomes clear to us, we'll be more than happy, of course, to make those sort of breakpoints transparent. That's not something we want to hide. We want to make sure we're serving our applicants the best way we can. The remaining 8 awards, that's going to come to a total of 50 awards, will be allocated to the highest scoring remaining applications, regardless of budget size, that allow RISCA to ensure distribution of funds across the state of Rhode Island. The General Operating Support Program has made a shift during our redesign process that happened in late 2025 and early 2026 to a flat award model. So rather than the award amounts being based on the budget or expense history of the organizations, the awards will be a flat amount of $10,000 per year for 3 years. We always have to say anticipated because our funding each year is dependent on appropriations from the Rhode Island State General Assembly and the National Endowment for the Arts. And I can say at this time, we don't anticipate any material changes to that availability. So our intention here is that these will be $10,000 per year for 3 years for a total of $30,000. Who can apply? We've opened the doors a bit wider this round of general operating support. So this is open to 501c3 nonprofit organizations based in the state of Rhode Island. Groups that are fiscally sponsored by a 501c3 nonprofit organization incorporated in the state of Rhode Island, only if your annual expenses are $50,000 a year or less. So if your annual expenses are over $50,000, You would need to have your own 501c3 nonprofit status designated by the Internal Revenue Service, as well as being incorporated as a nonprofit in the state of Rhode Island. Organizations or fiscally sponsored groups must fit RISCA's definitions of either being an arts and culture organization or a culturally specific organization with significant cultural programming. We'll talk more about that again in just a moment. I'll provide those definitions. They're also available in our glossary as part of the guidelines, which are posted on the RISCA website. So the grants, as I mentioned, are already open for application. They open July 1st. The due date is September 1st at 11:59.00 p.m. The system will close at that time, and we don't have a way to accept late applications. The funding period for this first year will support activities occurring between July 1st and June 30th, which are the state's fiscal year. Grant notifications will be sent in early to mid-January. You might be thinking, that doesn't make sense, Sarah. Those dates don't line up. What this means is that in the first year, given the timeline for the applications, if you were to learn in January that you have received an award, that $10,000 that you receive in the first year can be applied to any expenses that are eligible that are incurred between July 1st and June 30th. So if there's something you've already paid, you could retroactively apply those funds to eligible expenses. Reports for general operating support will be due July 31st each year for the duration of the award. So in this case, they'll be due July 31st of 27, 28, and 29. And those final reports act as your sort of mini application of sorts for the following year that would prompt the payment process for future years of funding. The next general operating support for organizations application due date will be in 2029, and all organizations will reapply at that time. So if you've been familiar with the program in the past, you know that we had one budget class in application in any given year, and it rotated. We are now running the program across all budget categories once every 3 years. We will not be accepting any off-year applications. Core to all of our funded programs, and this is true not just for general operating support, but across the programs that RISCA funds, is a connection and value to the community that's engaged with by the public, fulfilling our charge to facilitate a meaningful cultural life for all Rhode Island residents. Per guidelines from the National Endowment for the Arts and our agency values, programs that engage underserved communities as defined by the NEA, that's also in our glossary, are particularly suitable for general operating support grants. I did see a question pop up in the chat. Each year when you receive your funding, that funding will be can be applied to any eligible expenses incurred within the fiscal year that we are in. So in a future year, you might receive those funds in August or September. They'd be eligible to cover expenses incurred between July 1st and June 30th of the state fiscal year that we're in, and that is a requirement of our state funding. All right, eligibility. I know I'm moving through pretty quickly here, but we'll catch questions at the end. Every organization will have to have a unique entity identifier. If you do not have one, please reach out to me. There are instructions on how to acquire one on our website. That will be required before your application can go to panel review. And that is a federal process. I don't have eyes into that system, but we can make sure you get to the right place. Please know that a complete registration is not required. You just need the entity ID. It's free. Anyone trying to charge you money for it is not a legitimate source. In order to be eligible, you cannot be receiving direct funding from another RISCA grant with the following exceptions. You can be receiving a state cultural facilities grant. You may have received an arts and health grant or arts and health incubator grant awarded at the April 1st application due date. And if you received a project grant for organizations at the April 1st due date, these are the ones you will have just heard about, but were not in the last round of general operating support, so you are not already a general operating support recipient, you are eligible to apply. So in other words, if you were not in GOSO, not a general operating support recipient and received a project grant and you're on your way into the program, you're eligible. We'll get you on the other side on the way out. You won't be eligible until you're out of general operating support or not planning to reapply. Your organization's programming must occur in spaces that are ADA compliant. We do have some resources available to you if you have questions about what that means. Your funded activities must take place in Rhode Island for the benefit of Rhode Islanders. You cannot be delinquent on final reports for any previous RISCA grants. If you think that might apply to you, maybe your organization's had a change in leadership, please let me know. We can work with you to get that closed out to make you eligible again. And your organization, this is a big one, your organization must have been in continuous operation and exhibiting or producing arts and culture programming in Rhode Island for each of the past 5 years. You do not, however, have to have been a nonprofit for all 5 of those years. And if you meet the qualifications for fiscal sponsorship, you may still not be a nonprofit. So as I mentioned before, the organization, oh, we're no longer seeing the slides? Is that so? Can you give me a thumbs up if you're seeing them? All right, it looks like most folks are. If you're no longer seeing them, I recommend popping out and back in, or just keep rolling along and we'll get you the recording after the fact. So as I mentioned before, the organizations need to fit either our definition of an arts and culture organization or a culturally specific organization with significant arts and culture programming. I won't read these definitions in detail right now. You can take a look at them on the screen as I'm speaking. These are in the application guidelines spelled out. If you have any question about whether your organization falls into one of these categories, don't hesitate to reach out. Most of this we've already covered. So you'll need to be conducting business and incorporated in the state of Rhode Island. We do check that registration with the Secretary of State's office that you are a nonprofit in good standing. Governed by a revolving board of directors, trustees, or an advisory board drawn from the community at large, and shown to be actively involved in the governance of the organization. And then we've already talked about fiscal sponsorship. The link that is on the screen right now is also in the application guidelines at arts.ri.gov/grants, where you can check your status with the Rhode Island Secretary of State's office if you are not sure. Or you can be a semi-independent cultural entity. Sometimes this might be a museum at an institution of higher education. It could be an organization that exists under an umbrella of another Rhode Island nonprofit. You can be a semi-independent cultural entity that's either associated with the university or a subdivision of a larger nonprofit only if you meet these additional eligibility criteria. You have management control of your own budget, at least one full-time compensated administrative staff person dedicated solely to the operation of the cultural entity, and have an advisory board that meets regularly to discuss policy, strategic direction, and resource development plans that ensure long-term stability. More than happy to speak with anyone who thinks they may fall in a more complex category to confirm eligibility before you begin your application. All right, for more information on this, or if you're applying with a fiscal sponsor, again, all of this information is available at arts.ri.gov/grants/general-operating-support-organizations, or just go to the website and you should be able to navigate that. You're also welcome to drop me a line at sarah.leonard, no H on Sarah, at arts.ri.gov. My contact information is also available on the website and specifically on the general operating support page. Okay, if you have encountered RISCA grants before, this information will not be new to you. All RISCA grant awards are contingent upon the availability of funds from the Rhode Island State General Assembly and the National Endowment for the Arts. That being said, the funds that we are granting out with this first year of the application have already been awarded and secured. So those funds they don't have a question mark next to them. RISCA anticipates awarding $10,000 per year for all 3 years to all awardees. It is possible that award amounts may vary cycle to cycle depending on available funds if we were to see a change in our appropriation. And for the reasons I explained earlier, we cannot guarantee a funding level after the first year. We will not be granting any partial awards in general operating support. So either you will score in a fashion that has you selected by the panel and receive the 10,000, or you will unfortunately not be a recipient of general operating support, but will continue to be eligible to apply for other grant programs that RISCA offers. Grant applications are considered on a competitive basis. One of the fantastic things about doing what I do at RISCA is that I get to talk with you all and support you all through the application process as much as I want to, and can, capacity-wise. I want to do it all the time, because we have panels of experts who make the scoring decisions. So our panels are comprised of artists, arts administrators, and other community leaders from around Rhode Island, and the general operating support does also include artists and arts administrators from out of state in certain scenarios, because Rhode Island is small and we need a lot of panelists for this program who don't have conflicts of interest with our wonderful nonprofit organizations that are applying. You always have the option to decline a grant award with no penalty. So if something happens, your capacity changes, there's a leadership change and it's not the right moment for you, you can always decline an award you're given. That will not have any negative impact on future applications. It's simply just not information that the panel has in front of them. If you receive a grant, you'll need to credit RISCA on all your marketing materials. We'll have more information about that for awardees. And if during the life of general operating support, there's a substantive change to your mission, scope of programming, or organizational structure, it may necessitate a review by RISCA staff. So should those things happen, we just ask that you talk to us, and we'll be able to figure out the best path forward for you. Again, non-allowable expenses are consistent across our grant programs, and these come to us from our federal funder, the National Endowment for the Arts. So general operating support funds cannot be used for capital improvement. They cannot be used to address or eliminate debt that is existing. They cannot be used on development or fundraising activities or entertainment or hospitality. So think receptions, food and snacks, a party, a gala, etc. Every once in a while, there might be a food cost that is directly linked to a core programmatic activity. Please reach out and contact me if you intend to use funds for something like that, so we can ensure that they are eligible. If you were ever to be audited by the National Endowment for the Arts, we would want to make sure that everything you have will pass muster. Grant funding cannot be used for prizes or awards. You all, as sub-recipients of our award, cannot re-grant those funds. That does not mean you can't pay artists. Of course, you can do that, but you couldn't then run your own sub-grant program. Activities that are associated with a degree program are not eligible for projects that include proselytizing or promoting specific religious activities or that take part as part of a religious service. Anything that occurs in a space that is not ADA compliant, and then expenses occurred outside of the award period or outside of the state of Rhode Island. All right, so you've gone through all the eligibility criteria, you've heard all the do's and don'ts, you've decided you want to apply. To get yourself ready, there are a few things you're going to want to have on hand. Your 501c3 IRS letter of determination. That is not the one that tells you what your EIN is, your employer ID. It is the one that says that you've been granted tax exempt status by the IRS. Your unique entity ID, we've talked about that. It's a 12-character number assigned by SAM, System for Awards Management, at the federal level. 990s from each of your past 3 fiscal years. So we require your fiscal years ending in 2022, 2023, and 2024, because we know some folks may not yet have their 2025 filed if you did an extension. I will put a little asterisk here. This is in the application as well. If you do have your 2025, you can submit 23, 24, and 25. We just need to see your last 3 consecutive IRS forms 990, 990EZ, or 990N, which is the postcard if you have under $50,000. If you're using a fiscal sponsor, it's going to be their determination letter, their UEI, their 990s, and a fiscal sponsor letter for which there is a template on our website. You will need to have a board-approved budget. Please ignore the words project plan. That was a deletion that didn't occur. So your board-approved budget for your current or most recently completed fiscal year. You will be providing up to 4 support materials from the past 3 years, showing the artistic or cultural programming of your organization. You will also be using a template available in the application, and this is familiar if you've done a project grant before, that is a work sample or support material list. The purpose of the list is to orient the panel to what they're going to see when they open the Google Drive and look at those support materials you've uploaded. So there's a template. It'll ask you what the file name is, what year it's from, and any context you want to provide. So you might say, my first work sample is a photograph of the performers at our festival and the audience showing our 10,000 participants, or it might be poetry that you've written that's part of the core work of your organization. So this can be writing, this can be videos, it could be artist resumes, it can be images or posters or programs. You decide what those 4 things are that you want the panel to know. Remember that each panelist could be reading up to 25 applications. So you want to do the curation rather than giving them a link to your Flickr with 2,000 photos. They're not going to know what to look at, and they'll stop. So curate what you want them to see that you feel best represents the work of your organization and what you want them to see or hear or know. You will also need a testimonial or letter of support. We use a pretty broad definition of this, but it should be from someone outside of your organization. It could be quotes, it could be a letter, a short testimonial. Sometimes folks have even used screenshots of social media posts that event attendees have made if they don't have something that was more directly sent to them. Evaluation criteria. So this is important. This is what the panel will have in front of them and what they will be scoring your application based on. When we get to the application itself, you will see that the application questions link directly to the evaluation criteria. So panel reviewers will use the following criteria to evaluate and recommend applications for funding. They're broken into 3 categories: an organizational overview, artistic vibrancy and impact, and community engagement and responsiveness. We have 3 criteria under organizational overview. That the application clearly states the organization's mission. That one should be pretty straightforward. As long as your mission statement clearly indicates what you do, you should be in a good place there. That arts and cultural programming are central to fulfilling the organization's mission. And the application indicates relevant metrics to measure the organization's progress or success in the coming year. For that one, we do provide a checklist of possible metrics, as well as open text fields for you to indicate your own. All of this is available to download on the website, so don't feel that you need to document everything in your own notes. The second category is artistic vibrancy and impact. If you've applied for general operating support in the past, you may feel that this is somewhat new, and that is because in the past you had to have successfully received project grant for organizations or a project grant in education. and demonstrated artistic vibrancy and impact at that time. So we could take that as given. Because that requirement is no longer in place, we do need to ask about this as part of this application. This is one of the requirements that we have from our federal funder to ensure everyone we're funding has spoken to artistic excellence and merit. The good news is we are free to define those however we choose as RISCA. And for us, it is vibrancy and impact that we are looking for. So the three criteria, which will be familiar if you've recently done a project grant for organizations, are that the organization has a clear approach to providing positive and purposeful experiences for their participants. Your participants may be artists, your participants may be audience members, your participants may be readers. You will define who those folks are. And positive doesn't have to mean happy. It can mean that it's something that creates a positive experience, even if it's a tragedy, right? That doesn't mean everything has to be sunshine and rainbows. The organization demonstrates a track record of successfully implementing artistic or cultural programming clearly related to its mission. That's what they'll be responding to with your work samples or support materials that you upload. They'll be looking at those to try to answer this question for themselves. So keep that in mind when you make your choices. Again, these criteria are all available on the website. And the organization purposely provides access for or engages underserved communities as identified by the National Endowment for the Arts. That definition is in the glossary in the guidelines. And the third evaluation category is community engagement and responsiveness. So if you remember back to the beginning of the presentation, I showed you the 4 program goals, and the second one had to do with entities that engage with and are responsive to the needs of their communities. Here we are. This is being reflected in the third section of the application. So the 3 criteria here will be that the applicant can clearly define the audiences or communities it serves with data to support its claims. I do provide in the application some indication of what that data might be. For you, it could be ticket sales information. It could be demographic information about your community. There are a lot of different ways that we can define this, and we absolutely understand that different organizations have different access to different types of data. We're not expecting this to look the same across organizations, which reminds me of one other thing I want to mention here. While we are open at this due date to organizations of all budget sizes, organizations will be evaluated by a panel who's looking only at like size organizations. So I mentioned before that we would be breaking applications into 3 budget categories. The panel will look at only applications from a given budget category. We won't have someone with $5 million annual budget and a $5,000 annual budget being evaluated side by side. Because even though panelists aren't comparing one application to another, the scope would just be so different that it would become challenging for the panelists to provide a fair assessment. And then finally, the organization can demonstrate a track record. Oh, I'm sorry. Second one, organizational programming and operations are responsive to the needs and priorities of the audiences or communities the organization serves. And the organization can demonstrate a track record of intentional and collaborative community engagement. So that will be reflected in the questions that you will see. All right, where can you get more help? This webinar will be recorded and posted to RISCA's YouTube channel, probably within the next week or so. You'll be able to access it there and fast forward to your favorite points to revisit them. We'll be having drop-in office hours on Zoom weekly beginning July 29th. That's a great place to come and have some of your organizationally specific questions answered. And if you have some trickier questions or there's something that might feel confidential, we can set up a one-on-one meeting. For general questions about is this eligible or is that eligible, I recommend the drop-in office hours as a place to start, and then we can move to one-on-one if we need to. You can also email me at sarah.leonard@arts.ri.gov. And I'll say it as many times as I get, please, please, please do not wait until the last minute. If you start early enough, I can have the opportunity, if you ask, to review draft applications and things like that as far as my capacity allows. By the time we're in the last couple of weeks, it's very challenging for me to do that, given the number of applications that I receive. All right, let's walk through the application. I do see that there's some questions coming in the chat. I'm going to hold on to those for the moment until the presentation is complete, and then we will pick up with those questions. I'm going to pause the recording for just a moment to switch screens, and then we will go through the application itself. All right, so you heard me mention several times the RISCA website. Here we are at arts.ri.gov/grants in the general operating support page of our website. So everything that I covered in the PowerPoint presentation that we just went through is captured on the website, both in text here and in the downloadable guidelines on the right-hand side of the page. You can also access a PDF copy of the application questions. So if you'd like to get a head start or work on those offline before doing your application in the unit grant system, you're welcome to do that. If you have a fiscal sponsor and you need that letter template, that's available to you on the right side of the page as well, along with the evaluation criteria and the work sample or support material list template. There's my face if you need me. You can say, oh yeah, that's the woman I saw on Zoom. And my contact information is all below. There's also a link to the support session schedule. So if you think, oh, when are those drop-in office hours? You can click there and you'll get a complete listing. Please do note that some of the drop-in office hours are for general operating support for artists. My colleagues Molly and Tess are very knowledgeable, but will be focused on a large number of applicants applying as individual artists to that program. You'll be looking for the ones that say general operating support for organizations. We know the names are very similar and it can be confusing. All right, so there's also this handy dandy place right here that says proceed to online application. So when you are ready to get started, you can click on that link right there. I believe you should still be seeing my screen and that says unit grants at the top. Can I get a thumbs up? We are. Fantastic. Great. So this is the page you will come to. And you will click this little button that says apply to get started. If you want to see anything about eligibility or financial information, there's not much there right now, or want to find me, that's also there. But most of the information that you're going to need is actually on our website. So let's click apply. It's going to open yet another new window. If you don't yet have a Unigrants portal account, you'll just click create an account and create one for yourself. It's absolutely free, no cost. And we're going to do a portal login. All right, so I have already started my general operating support for organizations for Sarah's Arts Extravaganza. Can tell maybe it was a little bit late at night when I came up with that name, but here we are. And if you have not started, you'll see GOSO FY27 General Operating Support for Organizations. So whether you're in draft, or in which case you'll find it under My Applications, or just starting, you'll click there on the blue text. Often it takes a moment to load, so be a little bit patient. Until you enter a project title, it's going to have this bracketed number that says API and a bunch of numbers. That will be automatically replaced as soon as you start your application. All right, so here we are in Una. I'm just going to expand the window a little bit here. Hopefully you're seeing that. So on the left side of the screen, you have the opportunity to add team members. So maybe I'm doing some of the work on the application, but I also want Dr. Cho and Jen from Trinity and Matt from the Athenaeum to be able to contribute to my application, because this is Sarah's Arts Extravaganza after all. So I could add them as team members. Most likely there'll be people within your own organization, fellow board members, etc. So if you wanted to do that, you could just click add team member and add a person there. Now on the left side, you're going to see my application is in progress. It's purple now for GOSO FY27. There are three core forms. I shouldn't call them core forms because one is called that. There are three forms that you'll need to complete as part of your application. They're all right here, and once they're all complete, they'll update to green and show you a complete application. So let's take a look at what's included. In the core information form, you'll give us your project title and some identifying information about your organization. Before you can change anything, I'm clicking away on project title, nothing's happening. I have to hit edit at the top of the page. And that will be true even the first time you go in. So it's not just if you've saved a draft. So you'll click edit. Now I can go into these fields, make any changes. Add organization name. Any field with a red asterisk is required. Your organization address. Authorized representative. So this is who can sign the grant agreement for you. A business or finance representative, a project representative, and they can all be the same person. So if your organization is small and you're thinking, okay, that's me, and me, no problem. You are required to complete these fields. This is one of the state forms, but it is okay if it is one person twice or even all three times. UNA does not autosave. Let me say that again. The UNA Grants portal will not autosave your work. So you need to scroll back to the top of the page and either click Save as Draft. I'm going to make a change that'll let me click that, or Save as Complete. Even if you save it as complete, if there's something you want to change before you submit it, you will be able to do that. So in my case, I haven't filled in all the required information yet, and I don't want to forget that. So I'm going to click Save as Draft. So I'll still see that this core information form on the left has the gray draft status. Now, if I were to go in, just so you can see what it looks like, since this one is short, my project title, when it's general operating support, is going to be your organization's name, because this isn't a specific project. It's your organization's work. So I'm Sarah's Arts Extravaganza. So when I get down to organization name, it should also be Sarah's Arts Extravaganza. I have tried to place little instruction tips throughout the application as much as I can. So if you see this little exclamation point and instructions, I encourage you to read it because it might save you a lot of time, energy, and headache. We'll fill in my street address, my city. Oh, my state came up first. I'm going to say I'm in Colorado, but if I do that, we'll have a problem because I have to be in Rhode Island, right? So we'll scroll down to Rhode Island. I am in Cumberland today. Zip, phone, etc. So this is going to be me, and me at me.com. This one's going to be me too. But maybe you're actually the project representative. So this is going to be you, and you at you.com. Please don't actually use these email addresses. Fill in real ones. I'm doing this for the sake of expedience. All right, so now I have all of the required fields filled, so I can say Save as Complete. When I do that, you'll see that this core information form turned green, and I have the green completed. So that will tell you not whether you have everything you want there, but it will tell you that you have answered all of the required questions and saved it as complete. All right, the next form is the meat and potatoes. This is RISCA's application form, and that is where the questions connected to the evaluation criteria I just showed you will live. So we will click there. There's a brief description of the program. We will come back to this in a moment, but I cannot emphasize this enough. Please, please note this. On the left side, you're going to see a little tab that says Budget. It's going to create a pop-up. We are required to include this because the awards are $10,000. However, RISCA does not require a detailed budget breakdown for general operating support. So you are encouraged to enter $10,000 in the other category and say it is for general operating support and eligible expenses and save it that way. You do not need to provide a detailed budget breakdown of how the $10,000 will be spent. Okay? If you do it, it's fine. It won't hurt anything, but it's not required and it's time I don't want you to spend. You will be uploading an organizational budget approved by your board. That lets us see a complete picture of how the values and mission of your organization are played out through your expenditures. Okay? All right, I'll say that again at least 2 more times before we wrap up here. So this form contains the program-specific questions that are generated by RISCA. This is where the evaluated material will be. The other information in the core information form and the State of Rhode Island form, which we'll look at in a moment, are information that we will need in order to make the award on the back end, but are not evaluated. I've tried to indicate to you who's looking at what. So the first section is an eligibility section. This is reviewed by RISCA staff only. If you are not deemed to be eligible, we will not pass your application on to panel for further review. So your organization's legal name, that one field will be visible to the panel because they need to know who they're reviewing. Address, primary contact person, UEI, that is for RISCA staff only. I've repeated the definitions of arts and culture organization and culturally specific organization right here in the application, so you won't have to go back and forth. And you'll tell us whether your organization fits one of these definitions. If the answer is no, you're not eligible. So don't keep spending your time on it. Let's get you off to a program that's a better fit. If the answer is yes, continue on. The eligibility criteria we talked about, either being a nonprofit organization, fiscally sponsored by one, if your annual expenses are under $50,000, or a semi-independent cultural entity associated with a university or a larger nonprofit that meets these additional criteria. If you look at all that and say, yep, we fit those, you'll click yes. If you click no, you're not eligible. Let's get you to another grant opportunity. You'll let us know whether you're applying using a fiscal sponsor. If you are applying using your own 501c3 status, you are not using a fiscal sponsor. If you are a municipality that applied under that umbrella to a project grant, unfortunately, municipalities are not eligible for the General Operating Support Program. So either you have your own 501c3, you're a semi-autonomous sub sort of entity, or you're using a fiscal sponsor. If you are using a fiscal sponsor, please click yes. If not, click no. If you are, we'll need the fiscal sponsor's name, the fiscal sponsor address, and you have an option here to upload the fiscal sponsor letter. You'll just click add file, which it's not letting me do because I didn't click what at the top of the page? Edit. I have to do that before I can do anything else. Now we're active and I can click things. So I'll click add file. I don't know if you'll see it, but it brings up a browser window. You can browse as needed and upload your file. While this will accept Excel documents, Word documents, etc., I strongly encourage you, if you can, to upload PDF files. We can't guarantee what software products the panelists will have, and a PDF ensures that everyone will see it with the formatting you intended. There are free Googleable programs to convert your Word documents to PDF if you don't have a program that can do that. We will ask you if you're presenting programming in an ADA compliant location. We have some resources to support if needed. If you have a situation like I am here where I can tell the question is cut off, simply put your mouse over it and it will show you the whole question in a small gray box. Whether you see the whole question will simply depend on the size of your screen and how large you have the text set. So this question is about whether you've been in continuous operation for each of the past 5 years. All those eligibility criteria we discussed previously. There's an additional checklist covering some other questions. You'll be asked to submit your organization's or your fiscal sponsor's 501c3 letter of determination from the IRS. We are required to grant out federally sourced funds and our state matching funds to nonprofits, which is why this requirement is in place. There are 3 upload locations for your 3 990s, 990 easies, or 990 ends. If it's a mixture, because the first year of these years you were under $50,000 and then it was $60,000, that's fine. We require 22, 23, and 24. And by that I mean your fiscal year that ended in the calendar years of 22, 23, and 24. For some of you, that's the same as the calendar year. For some of you, it's not. Don't be fooled by whatever year the IRS has on the top of the tax form. Look at the year ending date for your fiscal year that is covered by that 990. If you already have your 2025, you're welcome to upload 23, 24, and 25 in these 3 fields. Great. Now we're into organization overview. So all of that material above, my team reviews. So we will review all of that to determine that you are eligible, and we will use the total cash expenses line in your 990s to determine which budget group you will be in for evaluation. Okay, so that's where we're sourcing that information. In the past, we've asked you to tell us that information and then average it, and then it wouldn't match the 990s, and it caused a lot of back and forth and headaches. So this time, we're just asking you to give us the 990s. We'll take care of the math on our end for you. All right, now we're into what the panel will review. So we'll ask for your organization's mission statement. If you'd like to pull up the evaluation criteria to kind of map the questions across, you're welcome to. Those are on the website. We'll ask you to describe the arts and cultural activities central to your organization's programming and how those activities relate to fulfilling the mission. You'll remember one of the evaluation criteria was this organization does this program and it's central to fulfilling its mission. So this is your chance to tell us what you want to know. I have indicated the character limit for each of these fields, and because I've hit edit, I can type in them. So when I start typing, you'll see that a character, if I spell things correctly, you'll see that a character count emerges in the bottom right-hand corner. So if you are working in Word and then cutting and pasting your text, please make sure to double check the character count. Sometimes things get cut off because Word wasn't counting spaces and this does, or things like that. So please do double check to make sure we're getting all of your text and edit if you need to. You have up to 2,000 characters to describe these programs and how they relate to your mission. That's not a lot. So if you have pages of this from other grant proposals, you'll probably need to pare it down. This is more aligned with RISCA's other grant programs. Again, remember that the panel is reviewing up to 25 of these and hone in on the things that you most want them to know in light of the evaluation criteria. Then the third evaluation criteria in this category, as you may recall, related to metrics for progress or success. We provide a checklist of possible metrics if this is something that is new to you or these happen to align with your organization's metrics. There are also 2 checkboxes for other. You can click those, and then there's a field to briefly describe what you will be measuring. Okay, we don't need every detail of all of the how, but we do need to know sort of that you're thinking along those lines of impact measurement. You'll indicate the intended participants or audiences. This is to help provide the panel with context for your application. It is not an evaluation criteria. So, serving children under 5 doesn't give you more or fewer points. This is just for them to understand the context of your mission and your programming. There's another place for population or community. You will indicate and attest to the fact that you understand what the funds cannot be used for. The complete list is here. It's the same as I presented a moment ago. You'll upload, using this blue Add File button, your organization's current organizational budget approved by the board, or if you're at a transition point and the board hasn't approved the current fiscal year yet, you can do the one most recently completed as well. That's perfectly fine. In artistic vibrancy and impact, oh, let me say this. You'll note that there was not an evaluation criteria connected to your budget. We are not asking or encouraging the panel to pick apart your organizational budget, to be concerned about whether you're in the black or red this year, because we all understand that organizations are making calculated and intentional decisions about that. So again, this is contextualizing information for them to see the way that your mission and values are playing out in your budget, where you're spending your money, things like that. Artistic vibrancy and impact. You'll have a few questions here. How does your organization ensure that programming provides a positive and purposeful experience for participants? You might remember all those P's from the evaluation criteria. This maps directly to that criteria. How does your organization provide access for or engage underserved communities as defined by the National Endowment for the Arts? And that definition is under the response box. That's another place where I've tried to insert as much help text and contextualizing text as I can. It's a little bit tiny, so pull out your glasses or your magnifying glass and check those out. There's the opportunity to link to your website or social media if you choose to. And now we're providing those support materials that are going to help demonstrate artistic vibrancy and impact. So there are two components. You'll remember I said there was a template where you're going to tell us, here's the file name, here's what you're looking at when you open a file with X name. You can download the template right here, complete it, and then upload your completed version. The download is a Word document so that it's editable. Again, if you have the opportunity to PDF it and upload a PDF, I do encourage that. Sometimes we see really funky formatting, and I want to make sure that the panel sees everything you want to tell them. Then you'll provide a link to a Google Drive containing those 4 support materials. I saw some questions in the chat about, can it be a document that has multiple photos? Sure. But keep it in the spirit of providing 4 support materials. Maybe it's a document that has a handful of pictures from your recent festival showing performers, audience members, and the different cultural offerings, right? And that's one support material about your festival. Fine, no problem. Again, pushing the limits of this tends not to serve you very well because the panel is looking at so much. Do the curation for them, guide their eye and their attention to what you most want them to know. And if you have questions, we can talk about it. You will provide a link to a Google Drive. If you choose to keep it password protected, we're going to need that password so that the panelists can access the Google Drive. What we recommend, though, is that you make it publicly shareable. I have given you basic instructions on how to make your Google Drive publicly visible to anyone with the link right here. That's also something that I can provide tutorial videos and things like that for if that's something that's not familiar to you. If you think, but Sarah, I want to provide a link to a YouTube video, just pop that link in a doc in your Google Drive and you can do it that way. All right, and then our last section for panel review is the community engagement and responsiveness. Your questions are, describe the audiences or communities your organization serves, so it's programming, indicate what data sources inform your understanding of who your audiences or communities are. I mentioned I'd provide a little bit of help text about what some data sources might be. So that's right here underneath the box. One of those hidden places you're going to look for additional information, along with the little exclamation point in the circle that says information at times peppered throughout. So your data sources might include ticket sales, registration information, public demographic data, qualitative data, observation. We recognize, again, that organizations are going to be at very different places with us and have access to different types of data depending on the nature of what you do. Very hard to know things, a lot of detail about who showed up at a public festival, but we might have a clear sense of the cultural community we're serving, how that relates to the population of our city or town or the state of Rhode Island, etc. So many ways to come at this question, and you only have 1,500 characters. We're not asking for a dissertation. We'll follow that up with a question about describing the needs and priorities of the audiences or communities you serve. and how that informs your organization's programming and operations. So impacts on operations. Programming is usually easy for people to parse and understand. The operations piece of that question can be a little trickier. I've placed some help text under the box. So impacts on operations could include the ways that you're understanding the needs and priorities of your community or audience, how that impacts your decision-making processes, the makeup of your board, any policy, your planning or evaluation processes, or actions that you've taken based on those policies and processes. The question can trip people up sometimes, and we know that, particularly the operations piece. It's not a trick question. So give it your best shot, and if you want me to take a look at it, work ahead, and I'd be happy to do that for you. Everyone's in the same boat here. There's not a magic way to approach this, but we want to see how you are engaging with and responding to the community or audiences that you serve. And then finally, how do you partner or collaborate within your community? And please provide at least one specific example. This does not need to shoot the moon, okay? Sometimes people are like, oh, well, we should have done our festival in collaboration with this guy. This could be as simple as we created a relationship with the church across the street to share their parking lot, right? Or it could be grand. It could be a really big collaboration. So please do provide us with one specific example. It can be within the arts and culture sector or outside. And then you'll upload your testimonial or letter of support, and you'll take a deep breath because the hard part is done now. But if you close out of it to go take your deep breath without scrolling back to the top and clicking save, you will lose your work. And that will be very, very sad. So go back to the top. I'm going to save as draft because I didn't complete all of the required fields. All right, the third form is the State of Rhode Island's required standard application. So you'll be giving us information again. The entity information here, the entity legal name. If you're using a fiscal sponsor, you will enter their information here, and that's in the help text. You'll give us an address where things are taking place, which congressional district you fall in, project title. I've instructed you to just put GOSO 2027 as the project title. If you put your organization name again, that's also fine. The project summary, in the case of general operating support, can be general operating support, or you can say something very brief about the work of your organization. This is not evaluated. This is metadata for the state of Rhode Island. Okay, so don't overthink the state of Rhode Island form. Especially when you get to questions like, is this an evidence-based intervention? Which, remember, the same forms being used across all of the state of Rhode Island's grant-making programs. You can say yes if you feel that what the work you're doing is, which for some of you it may be. You can say no or not applicable. It will not penalize you to answer that in whatever way is honest. If you happen to be addressing civic engagement through your work, check the box, check any that apply to you, or check not applicable. Again, this is not an evaluated form. This is purely metadata for the state. They'll ask you about target municipalities, so who you're aiming to serve, same context. And then this is the most important part where you sign to certify that everything you have presented in the application is true. If I'm completing the application, but I have a fiscal sponsor, then you would need to, if you're not an authorized representative, you say no. Oh, I didn't click edit again. Scroll back down. I would click no, I'm not the authorized representative. And when I do that, it should be providing me with a, let me see here. Should be providing us, there we go. So you'll need to sign in the box, click no, and then there's an authorized representative certification form. So that could be a place where your fiscal sponsor says, Sarah's welcome to sign this application on behalf of the organization. It could be a place where Your bylaws indicate that the board chair would have to sign this, but the board chair is saying the executive director can do it. So that will just depend on your agency, whether you are an authorized signatory. If you do need the certification form, there's a download right here and an upload right here. All right, we will scroll back up to the top. I promise we're getting close to the end. Save as a draft. All right, remember the budget form I talked about. So once I've done all these will all turn green. That'll be very exciting. The budget is a pop-up. We're going to click on that. Are you seeing a page that says application budget for Sarah's Arts Extravaganza at the top? Grand. All right. So this form looks a little bit different. What we are going to do, and I've started creating a step-by-step document that I can provide to you. So if you say, Sarah, well, what was I supposed to do for the budget again? I'll send that to you. It'll walk you through it, and we'll get that posted on the website before long here. I just did that yesterday. We are going to scroll all the way down to Other. Click on Other, and a row will appear that, if I do it in another category, you'll see says Insert Title, Insert Description, etc. Put in a title that's something like General Operating Support. And this is all indicated in the step-by-step instructions that will get available to folks. Description might be something like allowable expenses. So that if this is reviewed by the state or at the federal level, they see that you're indicating that you're going to spend $10,000 on allowable expenses. You have already certified your understanding of what are allowable expenses. Once you fill in $10,000 here as direct costs, it will auto-populate in this direct cost total field. And if we scroll back up, it will auto-populate in this total direct costs. All awards are $10,000. There's no other math or calculus that needs to be done. You'll click Save. I didn't make any changes, so there's nothing for me to save. And you'll be done with that form. All right. Let me do something so that it does let me save. So I'm gonna come in here. You can double click in the field. I'm just gonna type A1 so that it lets me save changes. When you do that, it's going to show you each of the saves that you've done. So if you've gone through multiple iterations, you'd be able to see your revisions. If there was some note you wanted to make about the budget, you could do that here, but that's not required. And then you'll click Save. All right. Now, if I go back, oh, that doesn't do it. If I go back to My Applications, I can go back into my General Operating Support for Organizations. Oh, it was already open. Okay. Because it had opened a new window. That's my error. There's a Goals tab here. There's nothing you need to do with that. If you open it, it's going to say no solicitation goals specified. So there's nothing you need to complete there. Go back to our application. So once all three of these are green, let's say completed, this in progress will turn green. You will have done your budget and you'll be ready to click Submit Application. If I try to click that right now, nothing happens. So that will become an active button once you've met the qualifications for submission. It'll tell you you've submitted it. You will not get an email that tells you it's been successfully submitted. That does cause heartburn for some folks, but you can log back into your UNA portal, go into My Applications, and you'll be able to see that it's there. Okay. All right. So once that is done, it is in Riska's hands. I'm going to stop my share here. At that point, my team and I will do the eligibility checks. We do those over the course of a couple of weeks. We'll get your application out to panel. Once applications are submitted, no substantive changes can be made. That being said, if we see, for example, that you've uploaded something in one of the 990 spots, but for some reason it's not opening for us, we will not toss your application. We'll contact you and say, can you please resend me that 990? It's not opening. So there is some opportunity for mechanical correction that's spearheaded by RISCA staff. We'll get it out to panel. They have a few weeks to do their review and scoring. Then we get those back. We'll start reviewing those. Panel comments will be synthesized and anonymized. Those will be provided at the time decisions are made to every organization, regardless of whether you are funded or not. So you'll get strengths, concerns, and suggestions from your panelists. And if you have follow-up questions on those after the fact, I'm more than happy to meet with folks about those as well. Once those funding recommendations come back, we also provide all of those panel comments to our council. They vote to then approve the funding recommendations or express any concerns. I haven't seen that yet, but it could happen. And then we'll make the grant announcements just as quickly as we can after that mid to late December council meeting. So given the holidays, you can understand why we've said January is probably the most realistic scenario for notifications. Of course, if we are able to do it sooner, we will, because we like telling you you've gotten a grant as much as you like knowing that you've gotten a grant. All right, I am going to stop our recording now, and then we'll take a look at questions.